us today. Hello, Jo.
Hello.
Jo, would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself and what we're going to be doing today?
Yes, indeed. So I'm Jo Burrell. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've worked in the NHS and privately for too many more years than I care to think of, well over 20 years. And I run a company called Ultimate Resilience, and we support people to manage stress, overcome stress, and build resilience skills, personal resilience skills. And we do that within organisations, and we also work with individuals. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how do we cope in these current circumstances that are obviously unprecedented. There's a lot of challenges to face. It's a completely novel and new situation that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about, how do we cope and what sorts of skills can we draw on to get us through these difficult times.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Jo. Right. Okay. So I'm just going to check back to our comments and see if we've had any questions there. One moment. There we go. Quick switch back. Dave, I first have a question for you. The question is about the engine test bed. If you're having problems starting it, what might the difficulties be?
Right, I'm going to assume that we're talking about the TD 200 small engine test set, and let's assume they have the petrol gasoline engine fitted. In my experience, the common problems associated with starting are sometimes the user can forget to turn down the water supply to the dynamometer. Because it's a water dyno, we need to turn that needle valve down to almost closed, but allow a little bit of trickle of water to pass through it. That reduces the resistance to starting. So you've got your pull cord method. That helps immensely if you have the water turned down. Secondly, check that there's fuel getting to the engine. So make sure there are no air bubbles or air pockets trapped in the yellow fuel line from the AVF1 or the DVF1 fuel gauges. If there is air trapped in there, the shortcut is just disconnect the yellow hose at the carburetor, pour the fuel carefully into a jug. When it runs clean and pure, then you know all the air's disappeared. Then you can recycle that fuel and put it back into the fuel tank. The other problem sometimes we come across is the oil level might be low. It might be quite low in the sump. Now there is a level switch, an inhibitor switch built into the ignition circuit on the gasoline engine. And if the oil level drops below a point, then it won't start. So make sure that your sump has enough oil in there. Also, make sure that your ignition switch is actually switched on the side of the engine. There's a small red toggle switch. And if there's still no success, perhaps we need to be looking at the spark plug. Is there a healthy spark on the plug? So carefully remove the spark plug, reconnect the high tension lead to the spark plug, let it rest on the surface of the engine carefully, and then just turn the engine over slightly, just a few pulls of the starting mechanism, and you should see a good spark across that spark plug. If you don't, maybe the gap needs setting on the spark plug. Just a word of warning, don't handle the spark plug while you're cranking the engine, because you could face the unpleasant experience of getting 22,000 volts shoot up your arm. I do it all the time because I'm quite stupid sometimes, but it's a nasty shock. It's not dangerous because it's very low current, but it's high voltage. So just rest the spark plug on the top of the engine, pull the cord on the engine, check the spark. So they're the four of the most, or the common types of reasons why the engine won't start. If you've got a diesel engine, it's slightly different because you have no ignition circuit. It relies on friction between the fuel and the air to start. So just set the throttle or the rack on the diesel engine to midway, Again, check that there's fuel in the pipe, check that there's air in the pipe. If there is air, just disconnect it before it goes into the injector from the fuel gauge, and just let the fuel flow. Remove the bubbles, reconnect the hose, make sure the dynamometer, the water supply is turned to almost off to reduce the friction, the resistance to the mechanism, and then you should be good to go. And 99% of the time, all those reasons I've explained there solve the problem of non-starting Dion.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Dave. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of break, and Joe, warm up, get yourself ready. I've got a question. Now we're all, well, many of us are contained in our homes with our housemates and family members that we don't necessarily spend this amount of time with on a usual basis, and they might be driving you a bit crackers. I must admit, I had a moment on Sunday evening where I just said, I've got to get out the house with nobody, and I'm off up the hill into the wood to have some time alone before I get really shouty and mean. Now, as a clinical psychologist, what would you recommend, apart from getting yourself some space like I did, other things that you might do to help you cope during this time of being contained with all these people, or not many people, whoever you're contained with for that matter?
Yeah. Yes, well, as you said, it is really important to get your own space, and obviously to use that time that we're allowed. You know, we are allowed half an hour's exercise a day, so we can go out of the house. I would encourage everyone to take opportunity to do that. You know, maybe get into nature, get into a park, enjoy the outside, particularly with the weather being so nice at the moment in the UK. You know, enjoy some fresh air, enjoy the sound of the birds, and, you know, all those that natural things that we see and hear out there in the world. It's a great opportunity to be able to do that, and it's really tough to be indoors so much, so really take that opportunity first and foremost. But also you can take some time for yourself at home too, if you've got some space that you can go to. It's important that we have some time on our own, that we're not with people all of the time. Many of us really quite like our own company, don't we? So it's important that you make sure you have some space for yourself, that you're not with other people all of the time. And actually, it might be useful to put some ground rules in place with your family or with the friends that you're living with. You know, at these times of the day, I'm going to be working on my own. At these times of the day, I'd like to spend some time with you. We maybe do some things together. You know, if I say that I need a bit of time on my own, then, you know, I'll go and do that. And I hope that you might respect that. So it's putting some rules in place, some ground rules in place for everyone to, you know, take part in, everyone to contribute.
I must admit, Joe, when I get to the point with my family, I go, right, time for a family meeting. Time for a family meeting, and we're going to discuss all this.
Yes.
But it usually gets to the wrong point where I've got so frustrated.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, Dion, is that actually, I think we all need to think about patience and kindness at the moment. These are two things that I think we're all going to need to draw on, and we need to be patient with ourselves and kind to ourselves, because these are really difficult times. We're going to be feeling anxious and stressed and frustrated at times, you know, worried about the future. But other people are going to be feeling like that too. And of course, we need to be patient with them. We need to try and be as understanding as possible, because there's going to be times when they're stressed, and their stress maybe impacts on us. And actually, just taking a moment to be able, you know, to actually talk to someone and say, are you okay, and what's going on, and ask them about how they're doing, is so much better than having that knee-jerk response that we sometimes get when we just get really annoyed and storm off, or we take it personally. So yeah, just patience and kindness. Those are my two mantra words for today.
Patience and kindness, right? Yeah.
Well, I go and paint things, Dion. That's my way out. Yeah,
I need to get myself a tin of paint, clearly.
And a paintbrush.
To be honest, I do retreat to the greenhouse sometimes. So I'll go off to the greenhouse and I'll listen to an audiobook, put it in my headphones.
Yeah.
And I can escape then from everything.
And actually, that's a great tip, because, you know, putting your headphones in creates space. even if you're with other people, that, you know, it gives you that opportunity to just kind of disconnect from everyone, doesn't it?
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Good. Thank you, Jo. I'll give you a little bit of a break now, Jo. Dave, I've got a question. I've got a question from somebody who's watching online at the moment. It's Murugan. Murugan has said, I hope you're all doing good. Regarding the STR7, let's have a look at the STR7 here. Let me pull this up a second. STR.
That's the unsymmetrical and shear center.
That's the one, yeah. The friction error plays a major role, and it is currently affects repeatability of the results.
Yeah,
frictional, frictional is the word.
Well, of all the structured experiments, and I've installed and played on or more for many years, the STR7 does prove to be one of the more challenging pieces to actually drive. So before the lockdown, I was in the process of talking to Murugan by email, and I was actually producing videos of how best to run this experiment, because the friction does play a part in gathering sensible, repeatable results. Okay, the secret though is in the setup, like all the experiments. Make sure that the specimen beam is in completely vertical. Everything is locked down tight. But the problems I think Murugan is facing is the friction in the dial gauge stems. Okay, now let me explain what that is. So the plunger itself on the dial gauge relies on pressure to push, and it's spring loaded. The plungers are actually spring loaded on the dial gauges, and if you're not careful, they can actually deflect the specimen beam, which is what we don't want. Okay, so my answer to Murugan is, at each angle, and don't forget we adjust the angle of that specimen beam in, I think it's every 22.5 degrees. Okay, so at every time that beam is rotated clockwise, you must bring the plungers on the dial gauges, ensure that they're square, and then you can every time actually zero the two dial gauges. Now you have a left hand one and a right hand one. Just by the nature of the experiment, you are permitted to zero the dial gauges before you apply the weights. And if you know, we apply 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 grams of weight to get your full set of results. So ensure the beam is tight, it's vertical. Make sure that your plungers and the anvils are approaching that specimen at a 90-degree position. Then zero the dial gauges, but then here's the key: you must tap the frame with your hand. Okay, just with your fist, just tap the frame along that bottom horizontal section. That removes any sticking and any friction, and then re-zero the gauges again. This is important you do that before you apply the weights. It takes some technique, I grant you that, but once you've done it a few times, you can actually get a good set of data, and then you can build what's called a Moore's circle using Excel. And unfortunately, just before we got locked down, I was in the process of producing a set of videos that I was going to share with you, Dion, to get out onto YouTube. So when we do get back into the factory, I will resume what I was doing and show you how to drive it. Videos speak much better than me explaining. Okay, seeing is believing, and you will see my technique, Murugan, and hopefully will satisfy the customer. We know it will. I know it will.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Dave. Wonderful answer. Murugan, if you need any more clarity or you have another question for us, please put your question in the comment box.
For sure.
So this is your breather time. It's back over to Jo now. Jo, now if some people are struggling to feel really unmotivated, they might feel tired, they might be struggling to focus on the work, they might be, if you're a student, you might be doing projects and really not motivated to get it done, or if you're an academic and you're working from home and you just find it really hard to find the drive to carry on. What would you suggest in that kind of situation?
So I would say that with the current circumstances and the fact that we're all working at home and there is very little division between work and leisure time and time outside of work, it's quite hard to impose a routine. But actually a structure is really important to keep you motivated. Having a plan of what you're going to be doing each day, and having such short periods of work rather than a long extended period of work. So say to yourself, I'm going to work for half an hour and then I'm going to have a break. Then I'm going to work for another half an hour and have a break. Helps you to kind of keep focused. Actually, our attention span's probably not much longer than about 20 minutes anyway. So having a routine is really important. Breaking up that routine with breaks and leisure time and time doing things that you enjoy, time doing pleasurable activities, and also social time is really important. So please don't expect yourself to be, going at it all day, every day with work. And it's very easy to do when you're at home and maybe there aren't other things to be doing, to be filling your time as you would have been doing normally. I would also say that I think it's important that we don't place, too high expectations on ourselves at the moment. So, we're going through this period of uncertainty. There's a lot, we're dealing with a lot of new challenges. This is, as I said, a very novel situation. And that means that, underneath the surface, there's a lot going on for us psychologically. There might be some anxiety and so on, worry about relatives, those sorts of things. And actually, if we're trying to work too hard at times when we're already under pressure and stress, actually, we can just burn out quickly. Our concentration might be not so good as normal anyway. So we need to be kind to ourselves again. We need to be patient with ourselves again and not place, expectations on ourselves that are beyond what we really can achieve at the moment. We need to allow ourselves to go through this process of transition into this new way of being. The other thing I would say that helps with concentration and attention is mindfulness. I don't know if either of you, Dave or Dion, have ever tried any mindfulness meditation or active mindfulness, but this is an approach which really helps with your concentration and attention.
Okay.
And there is a blog actually on our website, which you're showing at the moment, which is about living mindfully in the current time. So if people want to have a look at that blog, there are lots of links in that blog to different types of mindful activities that you can do and mindfulness meditations that you can do. All sorts of different ones, because different ones suit different people. You can do mindfulness for 2 or 3 minutes, or you can do it for an hour. You can also do mindfulness while you're going about your day-to-day life. So you can drink a cup of tea mindfully, or you can brush your teeth mindfully. So it explains in that blog a little bit about what mindfulness is, how to do it, and then there are some links, as I say, to trying things out. So yeah,
Jo, I particularly like the chocolate meditation. I'm so there with that.
And if you don't eat chocolate, which very few of us don't eat chocolate, but if you don't eat chocolate, you could do it with a raisin, you could do it with a piece of apple, but stick with the chocolate if you like it, definitely.
Fantastic. That's some really helpful guidance there from Jo Burrell. Okay, Jo, I'm going to give you a break. I've got a question that has come in online for you, but I'm going to give you a break before we come to that and hop over to Dave now. Dave, a question for you. Let me find a question because I've misplaced it momentarily. Fuel in the GT100. Let's pull this up for everybody to see. What kind of fuel can I use in the turbojet trainer?
Okay, well, we want you to use Jet A1 fuel for sure. Okay, this used to be called kerosene, and in some countries it's still known as kerosene. But Jet A1 or kerosene, I would not recommend using any biofuels don't use any diesel, don't use any chip fat or oil. Just stick with Jet A1, which is used on the majority of jet aircraft around the world. So that's quite a straightforward, simple answer there, Dion.
Why particularly Jet A1? Why can't I use, okay, chip fat? I wouldn't use chip fat, but why can't I use diesel, for example?
It does not lend itself to diesel. It's a different kind of fuel, Dion. Okay?
Right, okay.
So it's all the injector
designed
nozzles,
for this.
all the pipe works, it's all designed around the combustion of Jet A1 and kerosene or kerosene.
Right. Okay, wonderful. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. That's a good picture there.
Nice bit.
That's the actual afterburner running there, Dion.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Right. I've got a question for Jo again now. Jo, this is a question from one of our watchers. We are currently adjusting to lockdown. However, are there any concerns over people's behaviour when the lockdown is lifted? Will we have an excess of demob happy behaviour, in your opinion?
It's difficult to know, isn't it? I mean, of course, we don't know what's going to be happening in the future. We don't know how we're going to move from lockdown back into our normal lives again. I'm guessing it's going to be a gradual process. I'd imagine there will be that demob feeling a bit amongst some people, but there'll also be, I would imagine, quite a lot of reticence and anxiety and worry amongst quite a few people as well. Some people will take some time to go back to normal life, to take those steps back out into the world again, because we're all going to be worried until there's a vaccine for this virus. We're all going to be worried about the possibility that we're going to get it. And of course, those of us who've got underlying health conditions or people who are older will be particularly concerned. So I think there's going to be a mixture. I think there's going to be a mixture of different responses. But yeah, I think we probably need to be careful about that sort of demob, urge.
I imagine we'd have quite a lot of people who are really not sure what's acceptable and what people think they should do, and what the boundaries are, what socially people are thinking we can go to or not, and people getting mixed up, and some people getting a bit, I nearly walked into the post office yesterday. I only opened a door to have a look to see if I could go in, and before I knew it, the lady was shouting at me to get out. I can imagine there'll be lots of blurred lines like that when it all comes out, and people feeling a bit stressed about that.
Absolutely. And of course we've got to follow the guidance from the government about how we need to behave, and that changes, and of course they're learning as they go along, and they're learning from the experience of other countries about how we need to behave. So it's a learning process, isn't it? But absolutely, I mean, if we do ever get to a point where we can all stand near each other again, it's going to be a bit strange, isn't it?
It will. We'll have to adjust our personal boundaries again.
Yeah.
Right. Jo, thank you very much for that response. Dave, I've got another question for you now. The question is about the AF1300. This is a supersonic wind tunnel, one of our supersonic wind tunnels.
Subsonic.
Subsonic wind tunnels, rather. It's got liners in, hasn't it? These are the liners. Perhaps you could explain what liners are to start with. I think they're
sorry, Jen, I thought you said AF1300. Yeah, the AF300 intermittent supersonic wind tunnel and the AF302 continuous supersonic wind tunnel, they both have the same liners, 3 different liners: subsonic, Mach 1.4 and Mach 1.8. So depending on what speed of air you want traveling through the working section, you fit the relevant liner. Okay, to swap those liners out, you have a series of socket head cap screws. I think there's probably about 12 or 14 or so. You undo those and the liner slides out, and then you place back in the liner that you want. The liner can only go in one way, so you cannot get it wrong, because the profile is such that it's not symmetrical. So it has to go in the right way. So it's a very, very quick process that you would carry out while the wind tunnel's not running, obviously. There you see a good picture of the liners there. So the one with the deepest profile is the Mach 1.8, 1.4 in the middle, and then the subsonic liner at the bottom there. So it's a very quick process. It's a one-person job. The carrying handles assist greatly in the procedure. We just have to make sure that those liners are protected when they're not being in use, because we can ill afford to have any damage done to the brass section there. Okay, so there you go.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dave. And there's a close-up of they're the models that go inside, aren't they?
Yeah,
Inside the
that's
motor
some of the
section.
models. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Good. Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. Now I'm going to give you a break and hop back over to Jo. Jo, now I'm going to talk about boredom. Some people are now, in some ways, I wish I had the luxury of feeling bored
Yes.
with a busy family and work, but
We've lost your sound.
Come back, Dion.
She's unplugged herself.
Yeah, I don't think she knows. Maybe I'm probably going to have to.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, she's back.
I'm here. I accidentally stood on my mute button. Anyway, so I was just explaining that, yes, boredom, I wish I had the luxury of it, but I don't. But at the same time, I know how much I hate boredom. And there's a lot of people out there who are immensely bored at the moment. What tips, people say, oh, learn how to play the guitar, do all this. But, getting to that is... what would you suggest, Jo?
Well, again, I would go back to what I said earlier about routine. I think routine's really important, and that you're mixing it up a bit, so you've got a routine in which you're going to be doing some work activities, you're going to be doing some domestic activities, because of all of us being at home so much, there's a lot more cleaning to do, isn't there? And also cooking and those sorts of things. So, work activities, domestic activities, leisure activities. So mix it up a bit through the day. Don't force yourself to be doing lots of one thing, for a long period. Try to, change it about a bit. Stay connected with other people. So our social connections are really important, and they're really important for protecting us against stress and, gaining support and so forth. And when we get we get sort of connections with other people, we get things like amusement and, we have fun, we exchange ideas about things to do, we tell stories, those sorts of things. So make sure you're staying connected with other people, both inside the home and outside of the home. So, online, doing Zoom like we're doing today, staying connected within groups on Facebook and that sort of thing. I know you said, people tell us we should learn to play the guitar, but this is a great time to start a new hobby, isn't it? If you've got time on your hands.
Well, I guess it is true.
Time.
Yeah, I know. It's encouraged me to go back to playing the piano and learning the piano. Right. It's taken me forever to get through grade 1. And at the weekend, I just sat down. I'd not had any piano lessons for ages, and I usually rely on my piano teacher to help me get all my notes right. And I thought, no, I'm going to crack this. And I have, and I felt a great sense of achievement.
Right. Yes.
But I was able to check on YouTube that it sounded like it was supposed to as well, because I had no idea that I'd misinterpreted all my notes and everything. So I could, I guess YouTube's a great source, isn't it?
I was going to say modern technology generally is a great, it's amazing that we have this, in this day and age, because it allows us access to all sorts of information, videos, knowledge that we wouldn't normally have had access to previously. So if you're interested in learning about something, how to bake bread, how to grow tomatoes, how to play the guitar, whatever it is, you can look up online and find out about it, which is fantastic. And you can also join groups, interest groups. I would say if you're not sure about what to do, like how to spend your time, what activity to start, what new hobby to start, write a list of all the things that you're interested in and start from there. You'll find lots of interest groups on Facebook and all over the place. But that's a good place to start, because obviously you're going to be limited in terms of the activities that you do to the home largely. I mean, you can start running, but obviously you can only do that certain times of the day, once a day. So yeah, write down a list of all the things that you're interested in, and then you know, start to narrow it down and think about where you want to go. And as you said, Dion, once you actually embark on it, you get a sense of achievement, don't you, that you've actually done something. You feel a bit of pride, and these are really important emotions for us actually at these difficult times when we're feeling a lot of worry and anxiety. It's great to experience something like pride or achievement.
Yeah, good. And actually, I think it's worth mentioning your Facebook group.
Yes.
I think that's you could go for a plug.
Yes, we have a Facebook group. It's called You Are Resilient, as in the letters you are and then resilient. And we're talking a lot on there about, you know, how to stay positive. You know, people are sharing tips and ideas about the sorts of things that they're doing. They're showing some lovely photos of their experiences and the things they're seeing out on their walks. We're talking about the positive side of, you know, of getting through this, using positive emotions and positive experiences in order to get through these difficult times. So yeah, come and join us.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can certainly recommend it. I've been glancing through it, and it's inspired me at times to think, oh yes, I could do that. Yes, what a good idea. Sometimes it's just that little bit of inspiration, because you can be so bombarded by so much stuff out there at the moment. Everybody going, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. But sometimes something can just spark you and set you off in the right direction.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jo. Right, Dave, question for you now about strain gauges. Strain gauges.
What? On the structures range, Dion, do we think?
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about strain gauges on the structures range, because earlier we're talking about the need to apply loads before you even set the tear button, and why that's important. I wondered if you could talk us through that.
Yeah, so this applies to the STR5, STR8, STR17. Wherever we have strain gauges, we need to measure the strain using a strain meter. So the important thing on all these experiences, we need to take out any friction and any sticking in the experiment, and we do that by applying the preload. So with the load cell, the STR8A, we wind that up to 100 newtons, and then we zero everything, leaving that hidden 100 newtons. So we take the force meter back to 0, and then we individually zero or tear the individual strain readings on the strain meter. So with a small trimming tool or a small screwdriver, we just move around all of the channels. So it might be 17 channels, might be 13 channels. We zero individually the channel numbers, and then you're good to go. Okay, so it's important that we apply a preload. This takes out any of the sticking and the friction, or stiction as we refer to in the manual.
Oh, I think you should explain. Jo, don't you just love the word stiction? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a cross between sticking and friction.
There we go.
Yeah. So,
and we didn't make it up. We checked it on Wikipedia.
We didn't make it up, no.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about it pretty much for us today. Jo, thank you so very much for joining us today. I know I've certainly got some tips that I'll be taking away for coping. I think I'm going to wear headphones a lot in the house to just create a sense of space around me.
Just keep your headset on all the time.
Yeah. I'll just say I'm live streaming. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me.
Well, that happened last week, Dion, with the sheep. You had lambs and sheep and all kinds of farmyard animals.
We did.
Muscling in on our.
Yeah, I'm surprised the dog's not barking in the background. Yeah, they all want a bit of the action. Anyway, thank you, Dave, as well, for being with us today. We'll be back again next week, back on Instagram, back on YouTube, and our guest next week will be Dima Nasir, and she is from Lebanon. She's an academic for mechanical engineering, and she'll be talking about her career, her role as an academic, particularly a woman in engineering, and her journey. She'll be online answering your questions as well. So that's going to be a great live session as well.
That will be good.
Thank you, Jo, for joining us.
Thanks, Jo.
And we'll see you all again in the future. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bye now.